Okay, good morning, or now good afternoon. It's officially good afternoon. So good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you to this, another in our conversation series. We're joined today with the State House Democratic leader, Representative Joanna McClinton of Philadelphia. To begin today's program, I'm going to turn the floor over to a member of our executive board, Caitlin Ganley from Comcast, who has a message and then it has a brief video to share with us. So Caitlin, thanks for your sponsorship for today's event. Thanks for being with us. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Guy, and good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for a conversation with House Democrat leader Joanna McClinton. As Guy mentioned, my name is Caitlin Ganley, and I serve as the Senior Director of Government Affairs at Comcast, representing Chester, Delaware, and Newcastle counties. I'm honored to sponsor this event along with our board chairman, Tom Chiamento, and American Water. I've been honored to work with Leader McClinton on a very important issue, closing the digital divide. 2020 was a busy year for Comcast. We made several announcements to build on our longstanding commitment to advancing digital equity, closing the digital divide, and digital literacy. And 2021 looks to be just as busy. Comcast has invested in our Internet Essentials program by doubling the program's internet speed, which actually just occurred on Monday. This is the sixth time in 10 years that Comcast has increased broadband speeds for Internet Essentials customers while keeping the cost of the service at $9.95 a month. Xfinity still offers 60 days of free service to any new Internet Essentials customer who signs up before June 30th, 2021. Comcast recently announced a multi-year program to launch more than 1,000 lift zones in community centers across the country by working with its network of thousands of nonprofit partners and city leaders. These lift zones, which our nonprofit partners have identified and expressed the need to support, will enable students, families, and community members to connect to the internet in safe spaces in their neighborhoods. This way, everyone can participate equally in distance learning, job opportunities, and digital skills training. So far, Comcast has installed several hundred lift zones to further address the homework gap. Comcast has partnered with YMCAs and other nonprofits right here in Chester County, but we're always looking for new partners. Before I turn the program over to Tom, I wanted to play for you a short clip about our lift zones.
Oh, you think this is just a community center? No, it's way more than that. Because when you hook our community up with the internet, boom, look at Ariana crushing virtual class, Jamal chasing that college dream, Michael doing something crazy. This is the place where we can show the world what we can do.
Comcast is partnering with 1,000 community centers to create Wi-Fi-enabled lift zones so students from low-income families can get the tools they need to be ready for anything.
Oh, we're ready.
That's great, Caitlin. Thank you, Caitlin, for your sponsorship and support. And I just have to say, I'm going to give a shout out to Xfinity and Comcast. The Chiamento household, I think we test the limits of the Wi-Fi between the Xboxes and all the iPhones, the gaming that goes on in this house. So appreciate it. And thank you, Comcast. And it's my pleasure to introduce Leader McClinton to everyone. And I'm sure everybody has heard of Leader McClinton by now. We have a very accomplished, not surprisingly accomplished House Democratic leader. And Representative McClinton, her devotion to public service started at a young age. And when I say public service, I don't mean necessarily in government. It means to her community and to those around her. She started as a youth ministry leader at a young age, and then, went on to college at LaSalle and then Villanova Law, and even there made an impact through leadership. She helped create the Minority Alumni Advisory Group at LaSalle. She also is the president of the LaSalle University African American Alumni Association, and was an officer at the Philadelphia Barristers Association, which is the city of Philadelphia's bar association for African American attorneys. When she was elected to the General Assembly in 2015, Leader McClinton eventually rose to be chairman of the House Democratic Caucus. And not only was Leader McClinton, chair of the caucus, but she was the first African-American woman elected to chair the Democratic caucus. She worked, her experience in the General Assembly started with Senator Tony Williams. You were his general counsel for some time. So you really got hands-on experience there, learning how the machine works in Harrisburg and how to apply that to help people in your community. So, but the pinnacle, obviously, I think, from my perspective, looking and having been watching the Pennsylvania General Assembly for 2 decades, has been Leader McClinton's rise to her current position as Democratic leader. Not only the first woman to be Democratic leader, but the first African-American woman to become Democratic leader, and any leader in the Pennsylvania General Assembly, so Democrat or Republican. So would commend you and welcome you to the Chester County Chamber of Business and Industry. It's great to have you be with us today, and we'd love to, we look forward to the conversation we're going to have with you about what you're trying to accomplish in Harrisburg.
Thank you for the warm welcome, Tom. It's so great to be here. Thank you to our sponsor, Caitlin. I haven't seen you in a minute, but it's good to see you. Thank you to Guy for all his work with the Chamber. And it's good to see everybody, some familiar faces, some familiar names, some I haven't seen before, but I'm glad to finally have the honor of meeting you. I see President Walton. I didn't know I'd see you this morning, but I've got on my Cheney blue. Representing for my late Uncle Ray. He was the class of '74. West Philly Ray. May he continue to rest eternally. He's made our family so proud. But all that being said, I am thrilled to be here. I'm going to speak for a few minutes, but I would love to get your questions and, most importantly, your suggestions on how House Democrats can craft a legislative agenda that increases and expands your ability to flourish in business in whatever industry you're currently maintaining. Nothing's more significant, particularly as we're just about 1 year into the 2 weeks they told us last March. 2 weeks, stay home. But we're 1 year into those 2 weeks. And in those 2 weeks, they encouraged us to stay home, and it's almost a year. We've had so many changes. We've had so many challenges. Families, individuals have experienced ups, downs, some still working, some out of work, some business owners with doors shuttered, some are on temporary hiatuses. House Democrats stand ready, willing, and committed to ensuring that all of Pennsylvania, especially in the Southeast, and I'll say on this call, we're the economic engine for the whole state, but especially in the Southeast, that we recover. And by recover, that means that, we have the ability for doors to come back open, for right now, vaccines to get into the arms of our students at Cheney, of our folks who use businesses, of people like myself and my family who want nothing more but to go sit in a restaurant and enjoy ourselves, and people who work inside of restaurants who need to be safe and protected. We have so much to do and so much farther to go. And I look forward from hearing your ideas, because I have a few, but I think that you being right and ground in business and in different industry, you have a different perspective. And I have members of my team here ready to take notes and figure out who, if not all of you, that we need to follow up with so we can work together in the future. So that being said, Pennsylvania, compared, to other states around us in our region, unfortunately, we've, continued to be at the bottom as it relates to economy, as it relates to just one thing that I'm very passionate about in our caucuses, minimum wage. It's lower than every single state that surrounds us, including the southern state of West Virginia and Ohio, right on the other side of the turnpike. Every state, New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, you name it, all of them have a higher minimum wage than us. And then when you think about home ownership amongst people of color, we're 34th out of 50 of all states. So our population growth continues to stall, and it's very likely that after the census that was done last year, we're going to lose one entire congressional seat. It's not clear yet, obviously, where that will be on the map, what part of the state, but we are also one of the only states in the Northeast that has not put together a comprehensive plan for non-discrimination. I appreciate Tom talking about the historic nature that my colleagues created, to be clear, because they could have chosen any one of us. We're all leaders amongst our ranks, but they made history in choosing the first woman to ever hold the position of leader in the history of the House, which goes back centuries. But we know that there have been so many different forms of discrimination and oppression, and we are the only state that still does not protect people because of discrimination, certain forms of it. And we want to be able to get over that and say that no matter who you are, who you love, how you identify, how you show up to the world, that you won't be evicted, that you won't, miss out on a job opportunity, that you will not be put out of your home, but that you will also be protected under the Human Relations Act. So that is something that we have to address. Now, in terms of what have we accomplished? Of course, there's not 203 from one party. So we don't see everything eye to eye. But that being said, there are a lot of different issues that we can agree upon. And we certainly know that this is a moment in which a call to action is here. This is the time not for us to pontificate or to have endless hearings on certain issues, but we've got to get some things done. So I'm going to share very briefly with some of the things that we've done well. So one of the things that we did as it relates to getting through this pandemic was the Farm Bill package. We added accessibility to broadband to our farmers so that they can compete in a global market. We established a low-income housing tax program, and we put our differences aside as many times as possible, Republicans and Democrats, so that we can get the work done for our neighbors. And this includes driving billions of federal COVID relief dollars to small businesses, to schools, to nursing homes, to renters who've gotten behind in rent and in utilities. I was sharing with someone that a person who's a professional in my district, she's a hairdresser, she said she hadn't paid her rent, since September. And the person I was talking to said she probably also has not paid utilities for those months. So not only are landlords in a very vulnerable financial predicament, but our large entities that supply us different sources of energy are also in a serious predicament where they, April the 1st, will be able under PUC standards to, resume shutoffs for back payments. But we're hoping that the rental assistance that was given that can cover both rent and utilities will be used appropriately to get people out of the ditch that some of them have been in due to this pandemic. Also, we want to make sure that we can grow Pennsylvania, that while we push our people first agenda, that we're committed to all the real issues that people are talking about. That's the things that we just agree on and that are issues day to day. Good jobs in our own neighborhoods, no matter where we live. We don't have to go move, bouncing around from one part of Chester County to another to get a good school district, but that we have them in every zip code, that there is good, affordable and accessible healthcare, that our infrastructure, that it's safe, that our bridges, our roads, our highways are safe, and that we have clean air, water for the generations to come, our children, their children, and that we have also equal rights, because it's important that we are able to maintain a fair society. That's the only way Pennsylvania's workforce will grow and that our economy will flourish. And we know that many of the jobs in our economy are started from small businesses. We love our large corporations, but we know that many small businesses turn into bigger businesses and sometimes even into large entities. And they are ones who are like major employees, but we've got to have a tax system that keeps these organizations in PA, because some of those states I named that are right around us, they're very close. They're not, we can't all leave, the Southeast and get to Ohio quickly, but we can all get to Delaware, New Jersey very quickly. So we don't want our businesses to leave our state because of our tax setup. We want to make sure that as House Democrats, we're pushing very hard for a fair system that does not have any loopholes in it, but that is equitable. Another thing that we have to do is by making much needed investment into our infrastructure to make sure that we're building the bridges, the roads, the mass transit. Transit is a big issue and a big area that suffered under the pandemic. I was recently on the phone with some folks from SEPTA, and they are losing revenue about $1 million a day because the commuting has just not at all been what it was this time last year. And of course, like many other entities, they are concerned about their future. There's only so much a rate hike and a fare can do. They need a long-term investment. Our hospitals are also very vulnerable in this moment because many of them have been overwhelmed with visits, with people sadly battling for their lives with COVID, and then some traditional things that normally generate a regular revenue have been postponed, put off, sometimes canceled. So our hospitals are also vulnerable at the moment. And then the other thing is school funding. We've got to fairly fund our schools every single place in the state, as I was just saying, so that each zip code has a school that is not heavily relied upon taxes, property taxes, but is able to get sources from Harrisburg to support. And I'll wrap up with what to me is one of the most pressing, urgent things of the moment, and that is getting the vaccine distributed in a way that is fair, is accessible. I'm sure everyone on this call has either looked at the graph that was created by the Inquirer, or Channel 6 Action News has done a highlight on the inequities. And I have brought this to the attention of our governor. We had a meeting I organized for our entire caucus just a few days ago because it is concerning, it's alarming, and it's a challenge. You know, when we have areas that are densely populated, like where you all do business, where I live in West Philly, that we are not getting access to vaccine, it is holding us back from ever being able to move forward or to transition into the way things used to be. So it's important that we don't let our guard down, that we remain vigilant. And for those of you who are in business and in logistics that have suggestions, I'm writing them down. I'm happy to connect you to the administration because it is an area where we can improve. And I look forward to being a part of that improvement. As of yesterday, there were 2.4 million vaccinations administered in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, but we need to get up to 8 million. There are 8 million people that should be getting vaccinated that are of the appropriate ages. So we still have to make sure that the supply gets to where it needs to go and that it's an easy system for people to access. I've got friends, parents who say, what to do? Where do I call? I live here. I'm in Delco and we just got a health department. Where can I go? And it's almost like, for lack of a better reference, like a game, because you've got to go through so many different channels. So some of my colleagues have recommended we create a central web registry so that you're not on 10 lists. You're not on a list with Rite Aid and a list with your local pharmacy, and you're not on a list with, you know, whichever hospital. But we've got to do it in a better way so that as more supply becomes available with this new administration in Washington, we are ready to roll it out to every single person who's ready to get it. So I look forward to improving upon that so that we can do better and so that our businesses can get back to either being reopened or just flourishing because people are able to come in and out. And of course, still we'll have to have mitigation efforts like masks, but once we are in fact able to get vaccinated, we'll know that there is a little bit less threat. So with that, I've spoken for probably about 10 minutes, but I didn't check the clock, which is something I should do in the future. But I would love to have feedback, suggestions, questions.
Thank you, Representative. Again, as a reminder, if you have a question, please either include it in the chat or raise your Zoom hand. Begin with picking up on one of your opening points, and that was the overall economy. As you may know, working with a number of chambers, business groups, labor groups across the state, we were part of the GROW and are still part of the GROW PA Coalition. Even when the national economy was doing well and growing pre-pandemic, Pennsylvania was still, 42nd, 44th, 46th. And as we've noted in a lot of our chamber calls, and our board has pointed out, it's one thing to be the 44th economy when the economy is growing at 4% a year. It's another thing to be the 44th economy when the economy is shrinking at 4% a year. It's really bad, and every community's been hurt. So as you led with that, I just wanted to use that as a launch point and ask, what are some things that you think are doable to change that equation? because as you pointed out, it's not only about just moving up for numbers' sake. It's about communities, and it is about population. We lose jobs, we lose revenue, and we lose population because the economy is stagnant, and it's certainly stagnant compared to our neighbors. So what are suggestions on what you think some of those priorities are, and maybe there are things that we can get behind and try and help?
So thank you for that question and the observation, because the biggest key is being able to, get people into work, and not just into work, but like really the jobs that are sustainable and that will last. Because one of the things that this pandemic has revealed, or I'll say in some ways kind of just shine a brighter light, in that some things that we've been doing are just outdated, antiquated, and we haven't put the investment forward. I'll use a prime example, our office in the Department of Labor. So, my party's unfortunately not been in the majority for a few years, but who's counting? I am. I'm counting. But as a result, there's not been an investment in the Department of Labor. And look at what occurred. Your people have waited so long to try to get unemployment, situated, and they brought in extra people, but it just still wasn't sufficient. Their actual digital infrastructure could not handle 1 million people applying for unemployment all at the same time. They were getting less than 1 million a year on average. So we have to look at things like that are just outdated, that haven't had the right investment, because we have people in Pennsylvania in tech, in industry, not losing good folks from Cheney or good folks from other schools where we have the brain drain, where they go to different states. They should be, in areas where they can almost architect us to the future, where they can show us, these are systems that need to be updated. These are things that need to be fixed, while also making sure that we're expanding our workforce. And how do we expand our workforce? Some of our workforce needs development. Some of the folks who are coming out of school are not yet ready for what we'd describe as prime time. Or some of our folks who are coming out of high school are not looking for post-secondary education, but want to go to work right away, but they still need development. We need to make sure that there is opportunity to get soft skills, opportunity to be able to learn how to interact in a professional level, and opportunity to be able to explore career paths without, taking out six-figure loans in one program or another, because those are the things that hold us back and that keep us going. And one of the things that I've noted just in a state like Jersey, and because I live in Philly, it's literally minutes away, they have free community college, and it has a lot of their students coming out of 12th grade figuring out, what do I want? What interests me? What am I, what are my skills? What am I excelling at? What's exciting? And when you're in a lower pressure environment, because I'm not of the thought that community college is lesser college, but it is lower pressure than moving into a dorm freshman year when you're 18 and, doing all these transitions at one, if you're not necessarily there and knowing what you want to do. Like I knew from 7, I'm going to be a lawyer. That's my plan. So in high school, I'm like, I'm going somewhere to study political science. Get to college, I'm like, all right, what grades do I need to get in law school? But many of our kids are not thinking like that. And that's fine. I probably was a little stressed out with all those priorities from a young age. So that being said, we've got to see, how can we meet them? How do we transition them into programs where they're getting workforce training, where they're getting exposed to options, where they're getting exposed to trades, but they're not coming out with a ton of debt. So they do get an opportunity, not a gap year, but a real year of exploration, so that we can have them ready for our workforce. Too many employers, even in my district on commercial corridor, say, I try to give internships or this and the other, and they're just not prepared or ready. So that is something that starts with our schools.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It will require a broad, comprehensive approach on many, many levels. I appreciate the thoughtful answer. Tom Chimento, our board chair, has a question. Tom?
Yeah, thank you. So, Leader McClinton, when you were talking about Department of Labor and the challenges due to underinvestment, I couldn't agree more. I mean, the handling of the unemployment compensation payments and everything is, this was years in the making. These issues. I see it with DEP as well. I think there's an underinvestment at DEP. If you look at, and I know that in the business community, oftentimes it's, DEP is the enemy, but I got to say, there's a lot of, whether it's the regional offices, we try to work with to get projects done, you need DEP, and we need DEP to act swiftly and DEP to function. And unfortunately, what we've seen is, that agency has been decimated over a number of administrations. And so, just to kind of, pile on to your discussion about underinvestment. But the thing, and it's my duty, I think, as chairman of the Chamber of Commerce to bring up, I'd say probably the issue we hear most about relative to the governor's budget proposal and what your thinking is behind that. And like you said, we love our large corporations, and we acknowledge the governor's willingness to continue to lower the corporate net income tax. But the increase in the personal income tax, a 46% increase, hits the vast majority of our members. The vast majority of our membership uses the PIT. And to come out of this pandemic, to maybe have survived the pandemic as a business, and then to face the potential of a 46% tax increase, while certainly understand the desire to find additional revenue, it seems a little tone deaf, truthfully, from the business community's perspective. So that is one that I think that we are really laser focused on and concerned about, and just have an obligation to raise it, and would like your thoughts.
Absolutely. So I appreciate you raising it. One of the things that is a challenge, as everyone is aware, is the fact that Pennsylvania has a structural deficit. I talked about the need to invest in schools. I'd like to give a shout out. I think Chairman Tim Hennessy is on here. Hopefully it's the same person. But how we need to invest in our infrastructure. And PennDOT, is facing their own deficit aside from our state budget deficit. So we need revenue, and I'm not a business background. I did study that political science I talked about. So I'm not here with here's how to do it and here's the best way to get things flourishing. That's why I'm open to your ideas and your suggestions. But what I also know is that, it may not be the appropriate time to change the way our tax system is set up. And by appropriate time, meaning we've been in a pandemic and there's so many people who are just adjusting, transitioning, and barely making it, doing well. Some people have birthed new businesses in this time home. I mean, it's a variety of situations. But what I do know about the governor's proposal, and it's simply a proposal, it's not something that my caucus has made a commitment to. I definitely know it's not something the majority caucus has made a commitment to at all. I listened very clearly to those responses on the floor. But that being said, 6 out of 10 people are not making, and I wouldn't describe them as big bucks, but they're not making, the average salary in PA is 50 grand. So if you're that average salary making 50 grand, and especially if you're single or a parent with just children, you're definitely getting a tax cut. If you are a family of 4 at less than 100, then you stand to get a tax cut. But when you see, anybody going over whatever the elevator is, and I don't have it in front of me, so I'm making a few estimates, those taxes will go up. Should it happen now? Will it happen now? I'm shrugging my shoulders because I don't have an honest answer. And one thing you all will know about me over time is I am straight, for better or worse. And because I don't have an answer, it's simply because I don't have the votes. I don't have 102 votes to change the tax system at this time. I only have 90 members, for those who were not familiar with what the current structure is in our House majority and minority parties. So that being said, it is a discussion we have to have, the hard discussion of, honey, you're spending too much, so is that the Pennsylvania spending too much, or is that figuring out what the next level of jobs is? Is that talking about seriously marijuana legalization and how the state can benefit from that, from regulating and for distributing and making sure that it's not done in a way that offends anybody's personal beliefs. I certainly, you'd never smell it from out of my house. However, I do know that we have to really figure out how can we fill in these gaps. And one of the best things about this current moment, Tom, and I'm holding holding on to it with a lot of prayers, is that we stand to gain some more support from Washington, D.C. And if we do, that this whole conversation will likely not necessarily be ended, but probably just put on a pause.
Thank you. Todd Kowalski. Todd, you have a question.
Thank you very much. First off, congratulations. I don't know if it is a congratulations given today's political climate, but congratulations, and thank you for your very sincere answers. I think you come off very sincere and passionate about what you're doing, so thank you. And I think it's refreshing, especially given today's political climate. But that's kind of my question. Is I think there's a lot of conversations about improving dialogue and the ability for people to work across the political aisle. And I think, although in people's hearts they mean that, it's difficult to actually put that into practice. And unfortunately, I think the government's business and the best interest of the Commonwealth kind of ends up taking a back seat. And that's nobody's fault individually. It's the unfortunate reality that we deal with today, given a number of different situations with technology and 24-hour news cycles and all that stuff. But can you mention anything that's kind of going on from your perspective that people are doing to try to improve that, to make sure that the Commonwealth's needs are going to be met in the next couple years, whether it's from your side of the aisle or the majority side of the aisle, wherever it's coming from?
So first of all, thank you for the congratulations, Todd. I do still feel like it's a good thing, even though things are absolutely crazy politically. I'm happy to be here, and I honestly do mean, what I'm saying. I'm not pretending to have all the answers, and I certainly do know that it's been a very harsh, I'll just say our last term. This pandemic, in my perspective, just brought out some of the more partisanship legislating that we kind of had not been dealing with on a day-to-day basis, with, a ton of blame the governor, blame this person, blame the other person, reopen everything. A lot of, I'll just say least productive conversations. There was a point at the very beginning of the 2-week stay at home where, we did a lot of good work quickly. We changed the requirements for nursing students who need to do certain many hours and may not have graduated. We changed that. We changed the requirements for in-school education, as we were told to stay home for 2 weeks, but of course it wasn't clear how long it would be going on. We did a lot of good bipartisan work at the very beginning of this pandemic, but after that, it kind of just was almost like a derailed train, unfortunately. So much was not focused on being productive, and so much was focusing on the problems that we couldn't change. But what I'll share, quite frankly, I spoke to my counterpart, our majority leader today. I check in with him just to see, what's going on. I'm straightforward, but I understand it's not just he and I. If it was just he and I, we could get a lot of things done. But all of us have, not only our constituents at home, I've got 90, he's got 113, and everybody has an agenda, everybody has a goal. And some people have constituents who are, almost like that vaccine gets injected in us, injecting the worst of politics into their state representatives, saying, you go up there and you say this and you act like this and you do this and you do the other. And there's always a time, when you, to some extent, do a soundbite for your district, but it's gotten a little bit out of control. I, however, remain hopeful. I would not have ran if I thought there's nothing I can accomplish at this role. Believe me, I would have stayed as caucus chair and sought my colleagues' support to remain in that role. But I ran with the intention to really approach it from a new way, to approach it almost as an outsider, because I've not been there for as many years that most people are blessed with. Our chairman's been there for decades. It's amazing to serve and to run that many times. I can't imagine. But that being said, I approach it a little bit with a fresh perspective. I'm not in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. I'm in 5 years, and I'm also in with, standing on behalf of people as a former public defender, advocating and to get results. And I knew when I went into court, I am not getting what every single person I'm representing this week wants, but what can I do to get as close as to, what they're asking and what is appropriate and fair in the justice system. So I approach this work in the same way. You know, I can't get what my 89 other colleagues absolutely say, we got to have this, Joanna, and you go in there and you get this, but I'm going to go in there and get as much as I possibly can. And also just let them know, sure, you might have a little base that you got to appease, but we can't let them dictate the fact that Pennsylvanians are hurting. And Pennsylvanians need leadership. Pennsylvanians need people to speak up and to speak out and to work together, not just work against each other. So that is something that is an ongoing effort. And I'm hoping that, you know, whenever you have me back, I'll be able to say, and then in the spring, we did this, and the other. So I'll have a report card, Todd, but you know, it's a balanced one. It's me and the other folks. It's not just all my inertia. So we need you to also, with the folks you're plugged in with, say the same thing you said to me. Get work done. Don't just fight and bicker.
I'm bothering everybody. Thank you.
It's a team effort.
I can vouch for that. Todd's been bothering people for years. We have several questions in line now, so we will go to Aaron, then Caitlin, and then Jason. So Aaron Walton, as everyone knows, is the president of Cheney University. Aaron, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Guy. And thank you, Representative. We appreciate your Cheney Blue. And we also appreciate you representing both Chester and Delaware County, since the campus sits on both. So we have a unique role. But my question is this. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the fact that I am out of business and industry and bringing a business model to Cheney, one that proliferates public and private partnerships. And my question is, how do we position ourselves to make strategic investments in opportunities that will have an immediate return on investment for both the region and the state? How are we elevated to that point? Because I've got at least 2 or 3 businesses that are ready and poised to move into some of my unoccupied buildings that will produce significant employment for this region. So we're talking about immediate, and pay taxes, own property, et cetera. But we need to, and this is not partisan. Money is green.
Yep.
So how do we move past partisanism to strategic investments, which I'm familiar with and used to?
So thank you for that question, Mr. President. I think that your goals and your plans that it sounds like are unfolding at Cheney sound promising, encouraging, and something that we really need at this time and moment. And it's not blue or red. It is in fact green. And that's in some ways the root of challenges that we have as a Commonwealth currently, bringing new businesses here. I know that when there was a big search almost 2 years ago now on where a new Amazon would be, the city of Philadelphia spent an ungodly amount of money trying to lure them to Philly with billboards in Seattle, and nobody asked me. I would have told them that's not a good idea. Like there are other ways to do this. But anyhow, that being said, the return on investment is what's needed. We need our workforce to be able to get prepared for these jobs and opportunities. And when I see some of the things that are just dismal generally, it's the lack of opportunity. It's people, and especially younger people, thinking there's no place for me here. There's no future for me here. There's nothing for me to work towards. And if we can change that narrative through business and industry, through internships. I had a call like this recently with another chamber, and I encouraged everyone on there. How have you wrapped your arms around the next generation? And so many of them are just spending a lot of time with their phones. I had a student tell me at a career day, he's going to be a YouTuber. He's in the 5th grade and he had a whole plan. He said, I've started a few videos and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do the other. So we have to get in there so that they know beyond YouTubing, because sure, that could do well and make you a ton of money. You could become a star on the internet, but there are also other ways that you can work yourself up to either being an entrepreneur entrepreneur or to working in industry. So I think that there's several things that we need to do and have to do. And I'll take it back to the first answer I gave to guys. Like, it starts with young people, with children, with adolescents, with teenagers, people who are on their path of life, getting them opportunities, getting the students at Cheney plugged in, the students at Delaware County Community College in Chester County, so that these opportunities are not things that they haven't heard of because it's not, you know, something that's at the top of the local news, but we have to get it in front of them so that they're interested and that they can get prepared for these opportunities.
Thank you.
So Caitlin, you're up, and then Jason.
Perfect. Thank you, Leader McClinton. So as you mentioned, I think everybody on this call would agree that the Southeast is the economic driver for most of the state. But a lot of folks say that the Southeast isn't getting its fair share of education funding. I know that we've worked on the funding formula, but it's really still not fair until we get rid of hold harmless. And I know it's not a Democrat or Republican issue, but it really is an East versus West issue with people out West aren't going to get rid of the fair funding formula because it benefits them. But what can we do to bring more funding to places in the Southeast?
So that's an excellent question, Caitlin. And when we think about the challenges that our students have and why some are not prepared as others to move to the next level, whether that's college, trade school, whatever it might be, it goes to the inequities that are seriously systemic, that are, you know, just rooted throughout. And I like to always use a personal example. You know, when I was growing up, my mom didn't think I should go to the public school around the corner. So she worked an extra job, was a secretary at Penn, but also had a catering company, a deli, a business that was open when she wasn't at the university. So like 4 and up. And she paid tuition for me to go to private school. And she did that, you know, in the 80s, not that it was forever ago, but I'm using it to say, you know, if we get to 2021 and I have constituents who are sharing a similar story, there's something wrong, that nothing has changed in 30 years with our educational system, that they can trust it and trust to send their young people there and know that they'll be prepared. So we've got to almost sound the alarm. It's totally not fair that every dollar doesn't go through the funding formula. And I understand from many colleagues on both sides of the aisle that, oh, my school district's going to lose, or oh, my school district's going to lose. But it's like, if you don't have the population, if you don't have the English language learners, if you don't have the other things that we are dealing with, some unique special needs that need extra support, we should not be sending you a windfall every year just because you got it 50 years ago or 40 years ago or 30 years ago. We have to be appropriately funding every single school. And Pennsylvania is at the bottom when it relates to fair funding. It is not fair. It's anything but fair. And we can't just figure it out as we go. Like, our children don't get, you know, to say, oh, well, we'll figure it out in 2030. They're in school now. We gotta get it right now. We can't wait until they have kids and say, oh, we'll get it right next time. Like, they're literally in school now. So we have a lot of work to do. And it is a really challenging thing, and figure out how locally people can do it in a way that they're not saying, oh, well, we're losing all this money. Well, why don't you have it locally? What is it that your school district's doing that you don't have the support locally, so that you don't so heavily rely on outdated state funding that you don't even need according to this formula that the governor implemented in about 2015.
No, your talk about education reminds me, there was that movie, the sort of documentary movie several years ago about Waiting for Superman, and talking about how each new education leader came in and he or she unveiled a 5-year plan. And parents would always say, what do I do if my kid is 12? We don't have time for a 5-year plan. And that's sort of I feel about the education issues. It's not as if it's an instant fix, but when we have these 5 and 10 year plans, it doesn't do much for parents with kids in school today to feel as though, well, I take heart that in 2030, these folks will figure it all out, because by then your son or daughter's 18 or 19 and looking for a job. So I understand. Jason has a question. Jason's with Community Volunteers in Medicine, one of our wonderful nonprofits that does great works. And in fact, maybe we'll have the opportunity to have you visit. Then Majority Leader Brian Cutler came down and spent part of the day with them a few years ago. So we'd love to have you see the good work they do. Jason?
Thank you, Guy. Leader McClinton, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. CVIM is about a 23-year-old organization here in Chester County that serves uninsured, underserved individuals in our community. A number of folks who work multiple jobs but just don't have access to health care. So the wheel is just, it's provided by our volunteer provider, physicians and dentists. And we work with our health system partners, Mainline Health and Pan Medicine, to provide the care desperately needed to 5,000 individuals. So our CEO, Maureen Tomaszuk, who could not be here today, sends her regards, but she has been working diligently with the Pennsylvania Department of Health and even the governor's office to secure a supply of vaccine. And we were several weeks ago, we were designated a vaccination site for our patients, particularly. And we were just received a shipment of 500 vaccines that we're going to be administering to our patients on Friday. Great news around here. It's just really lifted everyone's spirits. So we thank the administration and all involved for securing this supply. We saw the news article in the Philly.com and ABC6 about what's happening with where counties are ranked in terms of vaccination supplies. Montour County being, the first with a population of 19,000. And you mentioned the vaccine rollout. So I'm curious, your mention about the portal, a centralized portal for folks to register for vaccines. That was of interest to me, and I'd love to see if you could share a little bit more info about that.
Well, absolutely, Jason. Thank you for your hard work. Volunteering and coordinating. I missed the full name of your organization, but I would love to come out and visit. I have a mask, a 95. I'm very careful. I take all the rules seriously, so you don't have to worry about me bringing 25 folks or anything like that, but I would love to come out and see the work you're doing. And I'm glad to know that you were able to get access to vaccine to get out to the folks in your program. So the central vaccine registry would basically eliminate all of the calling your doctor, calling this one, calling the other, registering either from one phone number, because we know everybody does not use the internet. Everybody is not computer savvy. Some people cannot get to websites on their telephone. Some of my seniors at church can't send a text message. So that's, neither here nor there, but we have to make it fully accessible. It either would be on one website through the state or one phone number. And instead of being on multiple lists, because that also throws out the need and the demand, if you're on a list for your pharmacy and you're on a list for your doctor's office and you're on a list, with the city, and I'll use myself as an example, living in Philly, I signed up with Black doctors, never heard anything. I signed up with the city, I'm not to my letter and number yet, but, have heard nothing. And I have friends who, especially their parents, seniors, who signed up on multiple lists and just haven't heard anything, have made efforts over and over again to get it. So we just want to take out the extra work. To quote one of my colleagues, sometimes it feels that the only way a constituent can get it is if they're just very lucky. And we don't want it to seem that way or feel that way or be that way. We want everybody to be able to say, okay, I know, April this date, I'm going to get it, or whatever the date is. My grandmother will be 90 in just a month. And she called me out one day. She said, I heard you're doing a big vaccine clinic at a church around the corner. Are you taking me? I'm like, Granny, first of all, you have an appointment at your doctor's office. Main line is coming up. Like, don't try to jam me as if people have not already signed up for that. And as if you're even able to stand and wait in line. Like, come on, sis. Like, you can't stand and wait. And then you have me, busting in front of people. That's a great article. So that being said, she was able, and I went to her doctor's website in February, or maybe, in early February, and it said, do not call us. We know who you are. We will call you. And to their credit, they did call her, and she had her first shot yesterday, but they gave her the appointment almost a month ago. But for some, it's not as seamless, and it needs to be more seamless and more accessible. So maybe this registration could be something. We return to voting session in just 2 weeks. So it could be moving, it could run, it could go to the House and Senate pretty quickly and get to the governor's desk. Or by that moment, perhaps it's a better just rollout generally. But I do admit that it's been a struggle.
Thank you. Before we wrap up, Representative, I'm going to ask you for maybe some final thoughts. I just wanted to thank you for coming. I do want to thank American Water and Comcast for sponsoring this. Several times you've asked us for thoughts, and I just want to share 3 that I think are hopefully doable. Because we look forward to working with you, as we've shared with Senator Ward, we've shared with Brian Cutler, we've shared with everyone who will listen. 3 things. One is, my words, please don't hold this to anybody else here. But I mean, the vaccine distribution has been a train wreck, right? I mean, we don't do well compared to other states, and the Delaware Valley has done poorly compared to the rest of the state, and Chester County's done the worst in the suburbs. So, I mean, we're in a badly served county and a badly served region and a badly served state. And there are other models, and it goes beyond politics of Democrat and Republican. New Jersey's moving along. West Virginia appears to be one of the best in the nation, taking care of the elderly and those that care for them. So there are plenty of models, and you touched on it. So we are fully committed to helping. I will tell you that we've had dozens and dozens of businesses and schools that have offered to vaccinate their employees, to vaccinate the public. There is no shortage of interest in people willing to be vaccinated or willing to help in one way or another. So on the vaccines, please, I implore you, we need to hit the reset button and do this right. We're having a hard time getting hundreds or thousands of vaccines out. Lord willing, in the next 60 days, we're going to get millions of vaccines, or certainly this spring. We've got to have the infrastructure and the communication. As many of our board have heard, if you and I wanted to go to dinner tonight with some friends and set up a reservation on Open Table, if 10 minutes later we wanted to change it to a different restaurant, Open Table wouldn't let us unless we canceled the first reservation. The idea that we expect our parents or grandparents or our kids to register in 5, 6, 9 places. You said it, we agree with you. So anything we can do to educate the public, get more sites. We have businesses that are ready. We're committed to working in a totally bipartisan, nonpartisan way to do that. Second, unemployment, as you know, even in our county, there are people in 2021 that applied in 2020 that still have not been paid. We have to, I mean, I don't mean to be facetious, but I will drive to Harrisburg. I will help volunteer to process the pay. It's just unconscionable that we told people they weren't allowed to work and then we didn't pay them. We've got to figure a way. And long-term, you're right. We've got to redo the technology. We've got to get in the 21st century. But again, like with the kids in school, there are families that have been waiting for their checks for months. They can't wait till we put in a brand new modern system. And the third is we're firmly committed to working with you to grow the economy. We understand that in the end of the day, Pennsylvania needs to be a top 10 state, not a bottom 10. And that comes from a county where we're frequently the strongest economy in the state. But we recognize the value that until every sector, that in our case, until Coatesville and Kennett Square and Oxford are moving, we're all not moving as a state, until every part of the city of Philadelphia and the region's moving is not. So if you have ideas and plans to grow the economy, to create jobs in healthcare, in technology, in energy, you name it, we're there for you. So I would leave you with that. Count on us for helping you with the vaccine. Count on us in being another voice for unemployment compensation be fixed, and count on us to work with you to grow the economy. And with that, I thank you. Would certainly welcome any final comments that you have.
Well, I'm counting on you for everything, Guy. It sounds like you're going to do like a Yanla and fix my whole life. Thank you. We need the help. We need the support, but quite seriously, we need the partnership. Government by itself has never been able to do everything, of course. We always have needed our friends in the private sector and, of course, in the nonprofit sector. So I look forward to a new collaboration for me. Chester County is not that far from home. I was actually just in Coatesville for Black History program on Sunday. So that being said, I want to be a partner as well. We've got to get the UC system situated. They always tell me when I continue to have the same type of complaint, oh, we're caught up except for, the ones that require the investigations. And it's like, well, the ones that require the investigations are the ones who are sending me messages on Instagram and Facebook saying your office said this, I haven't heard anything, and this is taking long. I mean, it can become dire in certain situations when you're thinking, yes, I can, leave this job because it's not safe and I'll be able to get unemployment, and then you run into a brick wall. So we are working on that. That's at the forefront of our goal with the administration, getting unemployment and vaccine done in a way that's right and that's correct and that's responsive. And most importantly, that doesn't give people the runaround, because it's nothing worse than government giving everyday people the running around. And then we complain, you're not engaged, you're not voting, you don't care. Well, why should you? You really feel as if you're being disserved. So it gives us an opportunity as this new month starts to start it afresh and truly hit that reset button, because this is the time when we need to say, here's what our plan is when we get, the millions of vaccine that we really need in our region, but of course across the state. Here's how we're going to give it out. It doesn't have to be that difficult. It doesn't have to be as complex, and it certainly shouldn't be people signing up on several sites and on several phone numbers and on several lists. So we've got to do that better, and I look forward to doing it. And then in the long term, I do want to learn more about what your chamber's partnerships include and how I can come out and see a few different sites so that we can think of tech jobs, energy jobs, things that will keep people working and also give opportunities no matter what part of Chester County that they live in, and how, getting back to Caitlin's point, that we really address the schools because they are the ones that will give us almost a pipeline to a better Pennsylvania. So I'm so appreciative for these few minutes. It went very quickly. Thank you so much for having me, and I hope that this isn't the last time.
Thank you again for being with us. We look forward to seeing you in person and having you tour here. In the meantime, I would, again, you or your staff, if there's anything we can do to help, we certainly will. I want to thank Tom and Caitlin again for sponsoring the event, all of you for joining us. We have our next conversation event later this month with the new treasurer, Stacey Garrity. Hope you can all join us then. Thanks and have a great day.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
Joanna.
Bye-bye.